It's Mira Business FM. This is the morning drive. Now, technology next. Foldable phones beginning to make inroads, seeing them more and more, whether they are bifold or trifold. Rumours are everywhere today that Apple is set to release their own folding phone soon. There have been rumours for some time, but the big article today in lots of the newspapers. Kevin Sebastian is a tech expert, joins us now. Kevin, it's a long time since we've spoken. It's good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. So let's get straight down to business then. What do we know about this new folding Apple phone?
So we know for a while that Apple was making a foldable device for quite some time. In fact, it's using Samsung's foldable display tech into it. But the leaks which have come out right now, and pretty much in full glory, is that it's going to be a 5.5-inch external display with a hole punch camera. And the rumor mill also suggests that this camera on the screen would be under the display, so kind of like how Samsung has it at the moment.
Right.
But the interesting part of this device as a whole is that it kind of looks like the iPhone Air, which we already have with an external display around it. And it also suggests that this phone's going to be thinner than the iPhone Air as well. So to get that little display creasing, I think that's what they've done right now to essentially create that form factor that consumers would be getting used to.
Well, that's going to be really important, isn't it? Because one of the things with foldable phones is the size factor, and I guess that kind of holds people back. Let me ask you about a little bit more about specs, or whatever you may or may not know about specs. I've been
Yeah.
looking at Mac Rumors this morning. According to them, this thing is shaping up to be, here's the quote, one of the most ambitious pieces of tech Apple has ever attempted. And Apple have attempted a few ambitious pieces of tech in their time.
Yeah, and we've seen that with the Apple Vision Pro, and again, they've always been the kind of people who set the trend and not necessarily follow. But in this case, they are quite a few years behind Samsung, who and in fact other companies who have started making foldable devices. And therein lies the question, right? Because is Apple doing this out of innovation or peer pressure? And I think that's the very important thing to note and look at, because Apple obviously have a very interesting 2026 for us. Because there's another rumor on top of this, is that when this phone does come out, the iPhone 18, the regular iPhone 18, won't launch with this generation. And the reason for that is because they want to stagger their releases, kind of the way Samsung does it. Like now, we know the Samsung's releasing the S26, and then they release the foldables later in the year, which is the high end versions of those devices. Similarly, that's what Apple is doing right now, and I think this has now come to a situation where Apple are now realizing their own products are literally competing with each other. Because in the UV, for example, one of the things is you won't notice people buying the regular phone; they would actually buy the Pro or the Pro Max, which leads to obviously sales numbers going down for the regular phone. So I think that's what they're trying to do now. And with the Fold, especially now with another model, so you have the Air, the 16E. So we have an E version, we have an Air version, and now we have a foldable version. And it remains to be said how much this phone's really going to cost now. And I do expect Apple, being Apple, to price the foldable device at $2,000 at least. So it's just going to be a very pretty penny to decide how much you want a foldable device.
Well, we're reading that estimates are somewhere between $2,000 and $2,000. You're right. It's another aspect I wanted to put to you. Is there an
Yeah.
element you think that Apple are launching now because they've seen the mistakes in the previous folding phones, so the engineering capability has improved to a point where Apple feel comfortable?
Yeah, I do think one of the things that I do expect Apple to market quite a lot out of the iPhone, if you want to call it that, is they would probably market it'll be the first foldable device without a crease. Because again, all foldable devices have a crease, which is quite noticeable. And that's just physics at work here. But then through some kind of marketing and engineering magic, if Apple can then claim to say that they are the ones who made the first creaseless foldable device, then that is like an instant sales win for them, because that is what they want. They want essentially people who have been on again iPhones and iOS devices to finally jump on the trend saying, "Hey, you wanted a foldable, you got one now, and it is the best foldable device you're ever going to get." And I think that's just it, really, because from the looks of the, even from the leaks as well, from what they're suggesting, and I think they couldn't have done this any other way. It does look like the Air, and like if you have two Airs put together, and clearly made it into not just like a tall foldable device, but one that looks like a wallet. So you essentially have something as very close as to the Samsung Z Flip, for example. I think that is the one thing that they're going to be selling people on the most.
Well, the word is they've created liquid metal for the hinge, and
Yeah.
that this crease is going to completely disappear. Who knows? By the way, if it's not called the iPhoneFold, I'll be disappointed. You should do some sort of, I don't know, copyright on that. A couple
Yeah.
of couple of things I think are interesting in terms of security. I read that Face ID is out and it will be Touch ID, so fingerprint ID, and that's a space thing.
Yeah, because one of the things I think at Apple are looking at right now, and this is a major issue being talked about, even as like right now with the Consumer Expo show going on, is that a lot of the verification, especially for minors, people who are under the age of 13 and have access to the internet, the governments around the world are now they're going to enforce this in mass where people have to verify by face or by some sort of ID to verify their identity in of their age on the internet. And this system has been gamed because people can use AI and they can use imagery software to essentially make themselves look older. And I think security companies are also of the same thing with biometrics as well. So being Face ID being removed as a primary ID, what do you say, the unlocking mechanism would probably be more Touch ID as well. So I think this is also something related to that, and especially with a foldable device like this. And I think this is also to do with the fact that again the way they structured their cameras is also something important to do. So I think that's why Face ID might be not a consideration for this one.
For sure. Did you see Idris Elba at Madame Tussauds recently, Kevin? Using
Yeah.
his model is there. I don't know if he used Face ID to unlock it by using the model, but his mother certainly fell for it. So the security aspects
Yeah.
do make sense. Could we look at a little bit more of the tech or the rumored tech in the phone? In particular, the bugbear of most mobile users, I think, is probably battery life. That's something that has to be addressed, particularly when there are more screens in play, and also the chip as well, the speed of the processor.
Yeah, so I do expect it to at least have a system spec that is closer to the iPhone Air. But given the fact that there are now two displays, that I think there's going to be a way bigger battery life. And I estimate the battery life to be at least around the 5,000 milliamp uh, size.
Right.
Because the important thing here is because even with the Samsung Fold, we have 5,000 milliamps to power two displays. And I think iPhone will basically, the iPhone Fold will essentially have that kind of battery on both sides to power each display individually. USB-C for sure for for the Europe region because of the mandate that they have in terms of keeping up with um, the restrictions of using multiple cables in the EU and the wider European region. So the UAE at least will get a USB-C variant of that.
Hmm.
And I think at the same time, the chip is probably going to be the next generation Apple's chip that we have already seen before, because they keep, from what I gathered and what I've seen with Apple as well, they clearly have more powerful CPUs just waiting to be released a year later. But then one of the most important things, and this is also another reason why the iPhone 18 is not launching, is because the cost of RAM is skyrocketing right now thanks to AI
Yeah.
and a lot of the servers in the world with data farms who are usually buying up billions and billions of dollars of RAM. So we're going to start to see a trend where we're going to start seeing the return of 8 GB RAM devices, where most of the computational power will be handled by AI, or that is what companies are saying. And I fully expect Apple to like fallen on the same narrative, because when you have the iPhone 18 Pro again not being launched with the last of the lineup, which means Apple is clearly prioritizing, yes, okay, people will buy the high end and then we put the low end at a later time when the RAM market stabilizes. So it all comes down to supply and demand right now. And I think we are going to see, I wouldn't say a very powerful foldable device, because they will not want to compromise their Pro Max or Pro lines at all. But at the same time, they will probably make a phone that, yes, you can take this, and if you don't want the Air, you can probably get one of the thinnest foldable devices on the market.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense. eSIM or physical SIM? I've read, due to space constraints, eSIM only, which a little bit of a pain.
Absolutely, and this is something I even addressed with the Air as well. Um, yes, I think to be honest, moving to eSIM does make a good argument here because again, those are the sign of the times right now, especially with people trying to go less and less reliant on physical hardware. But the major issue here, and I think this is one that Apple has not fully addressed, and I'm not sure they really are concerned about this, is that nations where again they don't have the ecosystem for that capability where eSIMs are already active. I'm talking about regions like India, even in some markets in Southeast Asia that Apple has a very strong presence in. That is a problem because again, having a SIM card slot is so important, especially over here as well. And what about if you're traveling and you're traveling to an area where it doesn't have eSIM functionality? That is obviously one of the major caveats that we saw with the Air, and we'll also see with the Fold as well.
Yeah, you're going to need two phones, most likely. So,
Yeah,
rumors somewhere around the $2,500 mark,
yeah.
pricey, but it's going to sell by the bucket load, isn't it?
Absolutely. In fact, I do remember when we went for the launch for the iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max, like people were buying about five of those models straight up in the UAE at least,
Yeah.
and like tons of like the sold out within the first week, and then thankfully Apple anticipated this, and then they had like a huge amount of stock left, and now phones are plenty available right now, and people are jumping onto it.
Yeah, the Samsung Trifold sold out, didn't it?
So here's the thing though, with the Samsung Trifold specifically, they brought in 500 units, and keep in mind the Trifold was only launched in 5 markets around the world,
Yep.
UAE being one of them, because they have mentioned this in person as well that the foldable market in the UAE is one of the strongest, and again 500 already brought in. In fact, I know for a fact that about 100 of them sold out and people were already jumping on the folding bandwagon because the beauty of the Samsung Trifold is that, like, yes, obviously, while you're having a cumbersome device to hold, the display was like by far one of the best folding displays I've seen. And by that logic, you can just buy a tablet PC. You can just buy a tablet, but then can you put a tablet in your pocket? That's the selling point. So yeah.
No, it is. No doubt about that. Do you think one thing? Do you think this signifies an explosion in foldable tech now? Is foldable now mainstream? Is this the way our devices are going to be from now on? Are we moving away from the thin slab that we carry?
I think one, and this is like a very interesting question you proposed because back in the day when Nokia were the king of mobile devices, they kept bringing some very interesting designs,
Mm,
and then Apple brought their iPhone, and then we've all adapted to the thin slab, as it were. And in fact, when the foldable devices came out, the first time the Samsung Z Fold came out, then we had the Moto Razr going back to the traditional clamshell model, and again, then we had the Z Flip. So
yeah.
I think we are experiencing a very interesting time where people are now having the appetite to be different, like to stand out from something just, from the usual form factor we're used to. And I think that appetite alone is what's probably going to lead us to like much more different devices, especially with the way displays work now. So in 2 years we're going to probably start seeing phones that you can wear on your wrist, and I because we already have the Samsung Watch, we already have watches. Now what if you combine the watch with biometrics and a foldable device? That's pretty much like the next generation of tech that and I think we've hit a ceiling right now on how much of like tech can actually evolve here, but that just comes down to how chips work in general.
Mm.
So the appetite for having a new device, and I think even people are holding out are not buying the latest thing. They would rather save up and wait for a phone that gives them far more rather than upgrade every year with diminishing returns, but still paying the same price.
Phones are very, very samey at the moment. They're kind of the
Yeah,
same, aren't they? And I guess we're
yeah,
differentiating ourselves with the covers that we put on them in lots of ways.
yeah,
Final thought: when do you
yeah.
any thoughts on when we might see the phone, when we might be able to buy it?
So Keeping in mind the release schedule, I fully expect this to come out in September. And from the looks of things, because again, Apple, when the phone leaked out, Apple were very serious about getting that video taken down. And you know that the fact that the design itself looks pretty much identical to what they had in mind.
Yeah.
So I do think in September is when we fully expect to see this. And as per Apple's timeline, in the second week of September, once you pre-order them, you should be able to get them.
Okay, let's see what happens. Kevin, we haven't talked for years and years, but I've really enjoyed seeing you, talking to you again. Appreciate you coming on. Thanks.
Thanks for having me again. Appreciate it.
Great to see you. Kevin Sebastian, tech expert here on Mira Business FM, talking about the upcoming new, we hope, foldable Apple phone. And if it's not called the iPhoneFold, I'm not having it. It's the morning drive. This is Mira Business FM. A like, a subscribe, always appreciated. Wherever you find us, wherever you join us from, and we always appreciate you getting in touch as well. info@mira.fm, the email address, or across socials. Everything we do is available to listen and or watch. Again, find us wherever you get your podcast from. Just search Mira Business FM.